Hiya friends, Prepared Suburbanite back at you. I've had to take a few days off from producing videos here on YouTube to get some things done around the house, attend to some appointments that were absolutely necessary. And so I apologize for not being around for the last 4 or 5 days, but I'm back. I'm a little concerned about something that caught my eye yesterday. As you know, we're about 53 days away from the November 8th, 2022 midterm elections. And I found out, not really paying too much attention because I don't deal with it, but early voting here in North Carolina has been underway for a few days now. And the latest report from our local news is that the Democrat requests for absentee ballots and mail-in ballots is outpacing the Republicans by a margin of probably 20 to 1, maybe 15 to 1, something like that. So, and thousands of them have already been requested. Early voting is already underway. Ballots are out. Here we go. So, 53 days away. Hopefully, nothing happens in the next 53 days that would change anybody's mind about the vote that they're going to cast yesterday. Well, we'll see about that. But the disturbing thing that caught my eye yesterday was a brief mention on Dan Bongino's podcast about Executive Order 14019. And I'll bet you don't know what it is. Stick around. Okay, so here it is. Executive Order 14019 is entitled Promoting Access to Voting. And what it's designed to do, and here's a quote from the executive order itself, where it starts like this. Black voters and other voters of color have faced discriminatory and other obstacles that disproportionately affect their communities. The order went on to say these voters remain more likely to face long lines at the polls and are disproportionately burdened by voter identification laws and limited opportunities to vote by mail. And as you know, voting by mail was a big deal in the 2020 election. We'll have to see how this all plays out. So, the executive order is designed to instruct all federal agencies, all the government, to work on a plan to address the issue of voters of color being disproportionately affected in their communities. This sounds so partisan to me that I'm surprised it's not getting any play in the news here, but thankfully Dan Bongino picked it up, and I heard him mention this, go over a little bit. There was an article published in the Washington Examiner by Byron York, and he's a pretty well-known kind of a guy, smart thinker, that kind of a thing, and he calls his article Joe Biden's Secret Voter Plan. Well, here's the deal. All right, so here's what's going on. Let me put it that way. Here's what's going on. This thing went into effect, or he signed it in March of 2021. At the end of July of 2021, the Foundation for Government Accountability, which is a conservative think tank, sent a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request, to the Justice Department asking for documents showing how the department is complying with Biden's order. And the Justice Department's answer was nothing. A year had passed and the Justice Department did not turn over a single document. So a federal judge set a deadline of September 8th, 2022. And lo and behold, on that day, the Department of Justice sent over a batch of emails and a few documents that turned out mostly to be staffers corresponding with each other over who would be present at which meeting. That doesn't get into any kind of a government-wide strategic plan to implement this executive order. Most importantly, Byron York points out that the Justice Department refused to turn over its strategic plan, none of it. And this is what the chief of the Freedom of Information branch of the Civil Rights Division told the Foundation. After review, I have determined that these materials are to be withheld in full pursuant to Exemption 5 of the Freedom of Information Act 551b5, which pertains to certain inter- and intra-agency records protected by civil discovery privilege. In this instance, the deliberative process and presidential communications privilege. To withhold the plan, the Justice Department relied on what has long been called the most abused exemption, this Exemption 5, known as B5, of the FOIA. This incredibly large cutout is often called the withhold it because you want to exception, which I thought was kind of cool. So, conservatives have asked, what's going on? What's in the plan? What are you going to do? How are you going to implement this executive order? And the Department of Justice says, we're not going to tell you, and we're protected. So go away. Just leave us alone. All right. So here is the main concern, according to Byron York at the Washington Examiner. The Foundation for Government Accountability is that the Biden administration is using the power of the federal government for partisan political purposes to influence the elections. There are also fears that the administration might be taking on a federal role in elections that the Constitution reserves to the states. So this may be against the Constitution. So we'll see. Now, there is a troubling clue, according to Byron York at the Washington Examiner, that did make it past the Justice Department censors. On July 12, 2021, so about 4 months after the president signed this executive order, the Justice Department held a listening session with outside activists working on voting rights. The group included dozens of people, all of them from left-leaning groups. There were 10 from the ACLU, that's the American Civil Liberties Union, 5 from the Campaign Legal Center, 3 from Demos, 3 from the Southern Poverty Law Center, 5 from the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, 2 from Black Lives Matter, and many others. The list would not assure anyone hoping that the Justice Department is working in a scrupulously nonpartisan way. Well, that's what's going on with that. So, what are the conservatives doing about this right now? Well, according to my research after I saw this on Dan Bongino's podcast yesterday. I did some more research. I read a number of articles. I read the executive order itself, which is really a lot of word salad that all kind of sort of sounds good until you really get down to what they're trying to do. But conservatives, Republicans in the House have put forward H.R. 7984. And very simply, it says this is to nullify Executive Order 14019 relating to promoting voter access. And its original sponsor is Perry Scott from Pennsylvania, and it was co-sponsored by Lauren Boebert, Lisa McClain, Mary Miller, John Molinar, Claudia Tenney, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Adrian Smith, Paul Gosar, Greg Stube, Byron Donalds, and Daniel Muser. It's been assigned to committee, and that's as far as I believe it's ever going to go. So we're stuck with this until such a time as we can actually overturn this thing. What I suspect is going to be happening is that they're going to be using my dollars and your dollars to encourage Democrat-leaning groups to push for more registration, to push for relaxed identification at the polls, expanded poll hours, early voting, and just like we've already started here in North Carolina, what's this going to do? It's going to help the Democrats. There you go. It's as simple as that. There isn't anything in here that's going to lend itself to voter integrity. Not at all. And that's not their point. So I'm very concerned about what's happening. You need to know about this. I was shocked, I think, when I stumbled on this and did some research. And do your own research on this in your search engine. Look for Executive Order 14019. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be on top of the news. Stay prepped. I'll talk to you on the next video.